Hello, friends. Welcome to Uncommon Philanthropist. I'm your host, Rena Olson. And in this episode, you're going to meet Carole Starr. And she is that. She is a star. Born to be a teacher, she suffered a devastating automobile accident that left her with a brain injury that would forever change the trajectory of her life. But that wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning of her new story. So I'm so excited to share Carole with you. She's now a keynote speaker and an author and just a next level uncommon philanthropist. Let go. Carole Starr, welcome to the Uncommon Philanthropist.
Thank you so much.
Well, it is so nice to meet you. I have read a little bit about your background and your journey, and we will let you tell the story in your words. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I am coming to you from southern Maine, where it is a very snowy day here today. And I am a 25-year brain injury survivor. My brain injury journey began on July 6th, 1999, when I was broadsided by a car going 50 miles an hour. And that led to a brain injury. And that, like so many of us living with brain injury, that changed my life forever. At the time, I was 32 years old. I was a teacher. I would go into organizations and teach workers various skills. I would go into a lot of companies that were undergoing change and teach workers skills that they needed to adapt to change. Little did I know that I was going to be the one who had to adapt to change. Oh, wow. I was also a musician. I had been a violinist for 23 years. I was a singer. I played in an orchestra. I sang in a chorale. I thought I knew the direction that my life was going. You know, I planned to be a wife and a mother at some point, and everything fell apart after that accident. You know, I was actually let go from the emergency room with just a diagnosis of whiplash. The brain injury did not get diagnosed until a little bit later when I was trying and failing to go back to work in music. And then it was realized that, oh, there's more going on than just the whiplash.
So you had, from the outside, you didn't have many scars or wounds from the accident. It was all internal.
Yes. I mean, I was black and blue from top to bottom on the left-hand side, but it was thought that would heal, and the whiplash part that did indeed heal. I had a lot of soft tissue injury on the left side, but the major issue was my brain, and it was because I couldn't get around very much in the early days, and people were helping me. I didn't know how much I was going to struggle. It wasn't until I was able to do more for myself, then when I started to try and go back to my real life, that it became apparent how much I was really going to have difficulty.
And if you could help us understand what were some of those struggles you were having?
One of the big ones was managing myself at home. That I'd always been able to cook and manage my household. And now suddenly I couldn't figure out what to eat. That I would go to the store and buy a whole bunch of things. Most of it would just go bad because I couldn't seem to figure out how to cook anymore. There was a time when I kept buying Italian dressing and barbecue sauce because I thought I was going to marinate things. But every week I'd go to the store, I would buy more because I forgot that I bought it. There was a time when I had an entire shelf full Italian dressing and barbecue sauce. And then eventually I ate cottage cheese most of the time for dinner. I don't know why I fixated on cottage cheese. I'd never eaten it before, but I think it was simple. It was something I could do. I would get overwhelmed by sound when planes would go over my house. Even though I was inside, I would duck, sometimes even fall, because they sounded so loud to me. It felt like they were coming into the house. I mean, I thought that the airport had changed the flight plan of the planes, and that they were buzzing my house. I'm really glad I didn't call the airport. But that is what I thought, because they sounded so loud to me. When I tried to return to teaching, I had been teaching basic communication courses for years at that point. Looking at my own lesson plan that I'd written, it was like it was written by somebody else. My students would come in every single time. I'd ask them, "Are you new?" Because I didn't remember them from session to session. Which I had always been really good with names. I'd look at that lesson plan and go, "I don't know what to do." I'd put them in groups to work and just leave them there because I didn't quite know what to do. I would it was just a 2-hour course. 2 hours of teaching would put me on the couch for days. Because it would make me so tired. Yes. And
were you aware of what was going on?
In the early times, no. I thought it was the pain medication that I was still taking for the whiplash. That's what I blamed it on at first. But the symptoms continued long after I had finished the pain medication.
I know your family and friends had to be concerned.
Definitely, yes.
And I know in situations like this, people can be helpful or they can be terribly not helpful. Can you give us some examples of each?
I had both. People would say to me things like, "Oh, that happens to me too," and what I was experiencing, it was different, and it was hard to explain how it was different. I say I get tired. This was a tired unlike any tired I had ever experienced. The only thing I could relate it to was like if you pulled all-nighters in college and multiply that by 100. Wow. I had never in my life been tired like this. And people say, "Well, yeah, I get tired too." Like, this wasn't the tired that like a cup of coffee, or a quick cat nap would fix. This was tired that, took me days to recover.
Very.
So people would joke about some of the symptoms in ways that hurt, especially at that time, because I didn't understand. And then people would help because I would get myself stuck places. I would think I was doing well and would try more than my brain could do. And I would overload, and then I wouldn't know how to get home. I had to call family or friends, and bless them, they would come and get me. And the joke was that my car spent more nights away from home than I did. And so I'm so grateful to family and friends, who supported me, especially, during those early times.
Well, what was your lifeline to getting a proper diagnosis and help?
Early on, it was actually the first physical therapist that I saw who realized there's more than whiplash going on here. And he talked to my primary care doctor, who said, "Yeah, I think there's more." And then I got referred to an osteopath. Eventually, it took almost a year for me to get referred to brain injury rehab. It was the worst year of my life because everybody kept telling me, "You'll recover." And most people with injuries like mine, 80%, do recover fully. But there is a roughly 20% of people with a, quote, mild traumatic brain injury. And that mild name is a big misnomer. Mild only means I was unconscious for less than 20 minutes. Mild does not have anything to do with the level of symptoms. Most people recover. For whatever reason, I was in that minority that didn't. So I kept expecting that I was going to recover. So that delayed everything. So it was that nearly a year before eventually my primary care doctor kept realizing that I wasn't getting better. So he kept referring me to different people to see, what's going to help here. I saw a neurologist early on, and his words to me, and I apologize for the language, but this is a direct quote, said, "Get off your ass and get a job," which was devastating to me because at the time I was desperately trying to return to work, and I couldn't do it. Then eventually he referred me to a physiatrist, a rehab doctor, and he said, "You need to stop trying to go back to work. This is not working for you. Yet you need to stop trying to go back to work for at least a few months and go to a brain injury rehab program. Little did I know that was that was the end completely of me, trying to go back to work. But I'm so grateful that he did refer me to brain injury rehab, because that is what I needed to begin the process of understanding what I was dealing with, and to begin to develop strategies, to begin ever so slowly to move towards accepting this new life. And that took a long time to come to acceptance of this new path.
I'm sure there was grief, a fair amount of grief in
absolutely, yes,
into all of that.
Yes, and I always tell people it's like, we died. That I didn't actually die, but the person that I was died. The person that I thought I was going to be died. The life that I thought I was going to have died. And that's ginormous grief. And all of us who are living with brain injury, we all go through that. I'm not alone in that. And it takes a lot of time to process that, to come to terms with that, to let go of what was, and to learn to live with what is. I liken it to, my mom died, it's now been 15 years ago. And I tell people that my brain injury grief, it was worse than the grief I felt after my mom died. And that puts it in a perspective, I think, for people.
Yeah. And you probably really didn't realize that you were grieving when you were going through it.
No, not at all.
Probably just all part of the trauma mixed in together with just having to endure so much.
Yes, because for a long time, I was just determined that I was going to get back to who I was. That was I wouldn't listen to anybody who told me that, I don't know, Carole. I pushed all of that aside. And it took one day when my counselor said to me, she said, Carole, is it possible for you to accept that you're not going to make a full recovery? And that when she said that question, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And that was the day that it began to sink in. And what's interesting is she later told me, she said, Carole, I've been asking you that question in numerous forms for quite a long time before, but I wasn't ready to hear it. On that particular day, I was ready to hear it. I was ready to start to let go of the old and begin to appreciate or to work with the new. Because there's a tremendous power, I think, that comes when we let go of the old and we think, all right, who am I now? What can I do now? Because the more that we focus on what we can't do, then we stay stuck. It was only when I started to focus on what I can do, however small that was. And for me, I started out with a paint by number. And I when I give my speeches, I talk about that paint by number. I say, I'm here today because of a paint by number.
Really?
Because that paint by number started everything that came after it. That was the first thing that I did, where I focused not on what I couldn't do, but on what I could do.
I love that you're talking about let go, because that is the tagline of Uncommon Philanthropist. It's let go. And it's my last question. So save those thoughts, because I want you to unpack that more, because you were really, really talking a lot about the importance of let go and how that is transformative. So many people just hold so tightly to what could have been or what could be or what should be. And that is exhausting.
Yes.
It's exhausting when we just open-hand it and say, okay, let's move ahead.
Absolutely.
So anything, so I know you feel like you lost a lot of character traits. Anything kind of bad that you lost?
Yes, I lost at least some of my perfectionist nature. Not all of it. My joke is that I tell people that I was a hard-charging type A person. Now I'm more like type A minus.
Okay. So you chilled out a little bit.
It didn't completely go away, but it tempered down some. And I like that better about myself, that I like that I am gentler with myself now. I am more forgiving of myself when I can't meet my own expectations, when things go awry. Things go awry. When I have to do my time on the couch, I do my time on the couch. And I like that Carole better. I like that I have gained wisdom and perception and empathy from this. I mean, this would not have been the way that I would have chosen to receive these particular gifts, but this is the way that I received them. But I am grateful for those gifts. I mean, I became an author because of what happened to me, which was a lifelong dream, one that I thought was gone because of this injury. But it turns out it was the reason why it became fulfilled.
Your purpose, help others.
Yes, and I did. I found my purpose through this. I mean, I always knew that I was a teacher. I've always been a teacher, but pre-brain injury, I liked what I taught, but I didn't love it. I found a passion that my life did not have before. Now to use my experiences to help others who are on this brain injury path, to use what I've learned to make a difference for others in the ways that I can. And I like having that passion now that I did not have before.
It's just tremendous. So I live in Metro Atlanta, and we have Shepherd Center, and they are renowned brain trauma center, and they just do such good work. And I have two friends that I've just seen within the past few days that are recovering from brain surgery. And I feel like brain surgery is brain injury.
Yes. Absolutely.
So if you can help unpack that a little bit, because I think people do, they don't kind of equate the two. They think brain injury comes from blunt force trauma or an accident or concussion. But I think it can be, I was just making that conclusion myself. So I know I would love to share this with them, and it might be helpful for them on their journey as well.
Yes, because brain injury, it can be like a traumatic brain injury, like I had, from some kind of an accident or a fall, but it can also be an acquired brain injury, which comes like from a stroke, from surgery. It could be from an infection, all of those kinds of things. So there are multiple ways that one can get a brain injury. Any kind of insult to the brain can cause damage to it. And that many of us, whether we are dealing with a traumatic brain injury or an acquired brain injury, have very similar symptoms. And it all depends on where in the brain was injured. Some things are very specific to whatever part, but some of those adjustment pieces that a lot of us go through, they seem to be very similar no matter where in the brain, we get hurt, because we're all grieving, the loss of our old lives, trying to adapt to new lives, to figure out, well, what do I do now? Those things are very, very similar. And that there's so much unknown, because as much as we do know about the brain now, there's so much that we still don't know. And that's
very mysterious.
And the saying is, if you've seen one brain injury, you've seen one brain injury. That just because, and I struggled with this for a long time, because people would say, well, I had a horrible concussion, 10 years ago, and I'm fine now. I'd be like, well, I'm so glad for you. But I'm not. Because the implication was, well, what's wrong with you? How come, why aren't you better? You should be better. Well, everybody's different, and one angle this way or this or that way, or it can make a huge difference in somebody's experience. And somebody can try as hard as they might, and they still can't, make a full recovery. There are so many things that are just out of our control. I have made tremendous progress in 25 years, but I still have a brain injury. I still have symptoms every single day. I will always have symptoms for the rest of my days, and I have long since accepted that. But that's not true for everybody. Everybody's path is different. And kind of living with that ambiguity, that's one of the hard parts.
Well, and so many times you look so fine.
Exactly. Yes. And that is one of the really challenging parts. I lead a support group, and it's a topic that comes up a lot. That we joke about the expression, well, you look great, because we get that a lot. Well, but you look fine. You don't look like you have a brain injury. And there was a time when comments like that would just devastate me, because it felt like it was an indictment that people say, well, if you look fine, then you have to be fine. When internally I knew how much I was struggling. Like, I might look like fine right now, but what you don't know is I just napped on the couch for an hour in order to have the energy to do this. I will nap after doing this, because that's the reality of brain injury. That those are the things that you don't see. And, I have found that, when people say those things to me, it's like, sometimes I say something and sometimes I don't. It depends on whether it's worth it or not, who is saying it, what the context is. It doesn't hurt me anymore, because I've kind of developed an armor against it, because I've heard it so often. And I've developed a strong sense of self now. But early on, when I didn't have that strong sense of self, all of those comments just came at me, and they hurt. Because when you're running as fast as you can and you still can't keep up, and somebody says, but you look fine, it feels like they're like just pushing you further underwater.
So it seems like the fatigue is a constant with a lot of brain injury survivors. Can you help us understand that better, and maybe coach us through on what we shouldn't say? Because I think people are well-meaning a lot of times, but
Absolutely,
in doing
yes.
that, they minimize it. So help us understand that fatigue. What is it? What does it feel like? And how can we better support people?
If you kind of use like a battery, metaphor, that, most people, they get up in the morning and their battery is full, that they've had a night's sleep, and they're operating with a full battery. I wake up in the morning, even after a full night's sleep, my battery is probably maybe half full, all the time. So it doesn't take as much for my energy level to go down, and because I've got damage here, so things are always having to find other pathways around. So my brain is working harder to do things that other people have a straight line to be able to do. My brain is taking the scenic route to do some work. So it's using up more gas.
Yeah.
So I run out of gas. And when that starts to happen, for me, I get pressure in the left side of my head. It starts to get difficult for me to talk. It starts to get difficult for me to think. And it comes with this overwhelming feeling of, I have to lie down. I will start to lose my balance. If I try to ignore it, it will become an actual medical emergency. Because I can't ignore it. Coffee doesn't help. Just sit down for 5 minutes doesn't work. Head flat, for hours or sometimes days, depending on how badly I have taxed my system.
Well, with you being a recovering type A personality, I'm sure you were a hard driver, and that's a hard reality to be able to just
because
not have your body go when your spirit is still willing, but it's like it's just not going to happen.
I've always believed if at first you don't succeed, try again, just push harder. And I'll be honest, it still gets me in trouble. I mean, I do better than I used to, but there are still times when I was like, oh, I'll be fine. I could do this. I'll feel I call my injury brain Hilda. I feel brain Hilda. It's like, I was like, oh, brain Hilda, I know you're in the building, and I'll see if, okay, I can push a little bit. And then things kind of, go downhill.
Control.
But that's the nature of it, because, I still have a brain injury. So I still sometimes have poor judgment. I do better than I used to. But I call it sometimes the ugly place where my brain injury and my personality collide.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about you finding your purpose as an advocate, as a speaker, as a writer. I mean, you have really accomplished so much and helped so many people serving in that role. How did you kind of begin to find your way on that path?
Well, I mentioned that it started with the paint by number, and I wasn't kidding. That it really started with focusing on what I could do. And
you
early
weren't
on,
a crafty person to begin with.
I was not a crafty person, not at all. And I had this voice in my head that was saying, make something, which was really strange for me. I'm like, okay, where is this voice? I ignored it for quite a while because it was like a weird voice, like make something. That's not Carole Starr. I don't make things. But after a while, I was like, well, I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I said, all right, well, I didn't really know what to make. I went to the craft store once, got overwhelmed. Actually, a friend suggested paint by number. So I tried that, and I loved that thing. I could only work at it for 15 minutes at a time. Then I would get so brain tired, I would need to take a nap afterwards. But I felt successful for the first time since my injury when I was doing this. I liked seeing the colors come together. I liked seeing that my attention and concentration were increasing as I worked on it. Then I started to do, after I finished the paint by number, I got into jewelry making, and I did some, I tried knitting, I tried photography, I tried a whole bunch of different crafts. And I started to then people said, well, could you make something for me? And suddenly I started to have an identity again. I wasn't just, Carole, person with a brain injury, somebody who always needs help. She's a professional patient. I was somebody who made things. And that helped me start to feel like I was someone again. And at this point, I was still receiving outpatient rehab treatment. And one of the rehab therapists, the recreational therapist, she knew about the crafts that I was doing. And she said, well, she knew I had been a teacher. She said, would you like to teach some of my patients how to make jewelry? I said, I would love to do that. So, had like a little class. I taught others how to make jewelry. And suddenly I was a teacher again. And then through that, there was a workshop at the main brain injury conference, and I was invited to participate in that based on all these crafts and things that I had been doing. And part of that workshop was I had to get up and tell my story for 5 minutes. I was terrified. I was really glad that there was a podium in front of me because my knees shook the entire time that I was up there. It was the first time that I had ever told my brain injury story publicly. But when I did that, I had this overwhelming feeling of I'm home. This is what I'm meant to do. I love doing this, even though I was so scared. And I knew that I want to do more of this. I don't know how. I have no idea how to do this at all, but I want to do more of this.
That's so beautiful, because I'm sure to have the courage to do that, you were pushing yourself. You were like, it was very me focused. Like, I need to do this. I'm a teacher. I can do this. Mm-hmm. But in the end, you ended up helping so many people, and that became your healing once you kind of crossed that barrier and started sharing your story.
Yes, and the support of the folks at the rehab, that really made such a huge difference. That I wasn't trying to do this by myself; that I had others. And at that point, I was starting to attend the support group at the rehab. It's the same support group that I actually now lead. And eventually, then I kind of found small little opportunities kind of here and there over the next few years. Because I couldn't do very much, just, little bits. And that was enough because that was what I could do. Then we, in the support group, we talked about, well, we could do a little workshop in the cafeteria at the rehab. And I spoke at that. We had no idea, will anybody even show up? 70 people, turned up.
Wow.
Which was remarkable. And, and I was part of that. And one person that they asked to speak, she saw me speak and she decided that she wanted to mentor me because she saw what I was doing. And she said, this is a person that I want to be involved with. And then she and I started to work together, and more opportunities came. She always said, Carole, you're going to be a keynote speaker. And I said, oh no, I can't be a keynote. I can do little workshops. I can do little 10 or 15 minute presentations. I can't do a keynote. She said, Carole, yes, you can. And I'm going to be in the audience when you give your first keynote. And she was when I gave my first one in 2009. And it just kind of grew just ever so slowly.
Baby steps.
Yes. Kind of like one of my mottos is start small, find success, and build on it.
Yeah.
And that's
good for good life advice for anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And all of it done with the support of others, because, none of us get through this alone. Yeah. We need the support of others. That was the folks at the rehab. That was my family and friends. And, it helped me feel like I could have a career that, it's not a paid career. I couldn't do that, but that I could make a difference. That I was starting to see how my story and how ways I could package my story could help other people with brain injuries. I was doing some writing at the time. I had this vision of writing a book, but at the time I didn't have the ability to pull it together. I had this idea, but not enough brain injury experience yet to pull it together. It wasn't until 2016, all of a sudden, that the idea of acceptance, because I struggled so much with accepting my own injury, I realized that's my theme.
Okay.
Yes, and I had developed enough wisdom from my own journey to be able to write about that wisdom, to share that wisdom with others. And then my book, To Root and to Rise, Accepting Brain Injury, I published it in 2017.
That is a gorgeous cover too. And I want to know about the title. Help us understand why you chose that title.
Yes. So the title actually comes from one of my poems. The book was actually written, and I worked with a writing group of other brain injury survivors, and we had been batting around ideas for this title for a while, and nothing had quite come together, and nothing quite captured the spirit of the book. And one of the phrases that we had come up with was "Say yes and rise," which I liked the kind of flow of that. So I had that in my head. Then I took a walk. And as I was kind of walking along, I had that phrase in my head. And then all of a sudden I said, "To root and to rise." And I stopped dead in my tracks, because that was the ending of one of my poems. And I realized that's the title of the book, that it captures acceptance, because when we go through the acceptance process, we have to find a way to put down our roots into this new life. And then we find a way to rise into this new life. I can read you the two poems if you'd like.
Yes, I would love that. That's so beautiful, Carole. So beautiful.
I have to read both poems because the poem that To Root and to Rise, the words are in, they won't make sense without the first one. The poem is called Phoenix, and it came from early on in my journey. And there was this tree that was at the end of my street, and I was mesmerized and scared by it. That at the time I could only walk just a little bit to the end of my street, because this was very early in my journey, and it was fall, and I was watching it change colors, and I felt like that tree was me, and it kind of symbolized my own journey. So this first poem was written about 9 months or so after my accident, when it was just kind of really beginning to dawn on me that this is long term, that what's going to happen to me. So, Phoenix. At the end of my street, on the edge of the marsh, stands a tree. She does more than stand. She commands your attention. Full of her fall flash. No ordinary red, orange, and yellow for her. She sparkles with crimson, magenta, umber and ochre plumage, a rising phoenix with outstretched wings, confident and bold. But her time is brief. Perhaps her colors burn too brightly. Her plumage dulls, darkens, and drops, exposing frail gray bones, pale and naked. Who is she now? The tree will have her time again. Will I? When I wrote that, I really had no idea what the answer was to that last question. The tree will have her time again. Will I? It took another 4 years for me to write the companion poem, to that. This is Phoenix Revisited. At the end of my street, on the edge of the marsh, stands that same tree. The haunting, hoping desire. The tree will have her time again. Will I? Finally answered with a quiet confidence. No. For that is the wrong question. I'm no longer that tree. I'm a new being on a new journey. Spinning, sailing, falling, flailing, writhing, wailing, landing. In my own soft space. Safe. To root and to rise. To live this new time.
That is powerful and beautiful. So did you ever write poetry before? I mean,
I did, yes.
That is beautiful use of words, and that closer is a
So it meant a lot to me that the title came from something that I wrote when I was early on in my own acceptance journey.
And I sat in on a speaker who's a author's consultant, and she was talking about how many people want to write a book. And I think the number she gave was like 80% of people think they want to write a book. But in reality, the number of people that actually write the book and get it published, it's like 0.4% of that number. So for you to successfully publish a book, and
it took 12 years.
Labor of love.
Yes. I'm writing a second one now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I just passed 25 years. So last fall I did a keynote called Silver Learnings, Lessons from 25 Years of Living with Brain Injury, 25 lessons that I've learned. And I realized after I did that keynote that this is another book. So the book is those 25 lessons.
Well, that's beautiful. Well, what kind of feedback have you gotten from people who've read the book?
Oh, it's been so positive that it's been so heartening when people write to me, or the reviews that I've read, that it's really helped people on their journey, that people have said that how much that I've put into words what they couldn't put into words because they're early in their journey. And I couldn't have put into the words when I was early in the journey either. I had to wait a while to write this book because I wanted to write a wisdom book, and you got to wait for wisdom.
Yeah.
So
sometimes it never comes.
The idea that my experience and my words help people, it means a lot.
And then I just would like to talk to you a little bit about acceptance, and how you kind of landed on that as the overall theme of the book, which is the theme of your life.
It came as kind of an aha moment. It was in 2015 that I gave a keynote on resilience. And somehow after that experience, and then kind of processing that and thinking about what my next step was and writing about it, that all this, I had just kind of this aha moment, that acceptance, that this is what it is. That, as I had a whole bunch of sort of half written chapters at this point, but no theme to them. And it literally was an aha moment that's what ties it together. That because I had had such a difficult time coming to acceptance myself, that I had things to say. And I think doing that, my second keynote, the one on resilience, it started me on that path to believing in my own voice. I mean, there was still more work to do because my writing really helped me a lot in the early times of writing, of really trusting, like, who am I to write something, to say what, to say anything, and help me to believe in the power of my own voice. And I think that doing that keynote helped me, and then they helped me. And then realizing that I do have a voice, I do have a point of view, I do have things to share. And that the way that I want to do this is unique. That the way that I structure my book is different than other books in the brain injury literature.
Right. And I think you said in the book, it's like, it's not meant to be read literally. If you want to read one chapter here and then skip to chapter 5, do what works for you. And I think
exactly
that's a good for people who have brain injury, that they don't, you don't have to follow that linear path all the time.
Yes, exactly.
Beautiful. Well, let's talk about the, let me get this right, the Brain Injury Association of America.
Yes, I'm a volunteer with them.
The role they've played in your life.
Yes. So I have been involved with the Brain Injury Association of America since 2016. As a volunteer, I am on part of the Brain Injury Advisory Council, also known as the Survivors Council. I am one of the co-leaders of that group. In 2016, I started to go to Brain Injury Awareness Day on Capitol Hill. And the first time that I went, I met members of that council and said, wow, there are survivors like all across the country who get together and who are also like advocates like me, who want to do good work together. I said, oh, this is something I'd like to be part of. So I did join that council, and we worked together to create videos and articles, and we each advocate in our own individual states, but then we come together to create content that we think is going to be relevant to survivors. And we're grateful that BIA kind of gives us a platform to do that. And we offer our opinions as survivors to the Brain Injury Association, to give them kind of the survivor perspective on various things.
And then March is Brain Injury Awareness Month.
Yes.
Correct? Will you be doing anything special for that?
Yes, I will be traveling to DC in just a couple of weeks here for the Brain Injury Awareness Day and Conference. It's a bigger event this year. This year they're doing a conference as well as Brain Injury Awareness Day on Capitol Hill. So we'll be part of that conference. We'll also be on the Hill in early March, going to visit my representatives and senators.
Really amazing work. And as I said earlier, when you started talking about Let Go, that is the tag and theme of Uncommon Philanthropist. And I really just love how you're using your life in service to other people. It's really at the heart of philanthropy, which is love of humanity. So thank you for how you're serving and loving your fellow people, sharing the good and the bad and the real, and just, we're all in this together. So I would love you start talking a little bit about Let Go, but Carole, just kind of close us out with, and if you want to say let go, and then just give me a little sermon on what let go means to you.
Absolutely. There is such power in those words, let go, that we think strength means holding on, when in actuality, strength often really means let go.
Well, so how can people get in touch with you? Where can they find the book?
Yeah, so my book is on Amazon. People can also see all of the various videos that I've done are on my website, which is Starr, STARR, speakerauthor.com.
I so enjoyed our time together. I will be looking for you on Capitol Hill in March and cheering
will
you
you be
on.
there?
And definitely when you get that second book written, let's
Yes,
definitely
it should,
connect
should be
again.
some. It's a little more than halfway done now, so it should be sometime this year.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Carole. Keep up the great work and
Thank
keep in
you.
touch. I'm just so happy to have had this time with you. And thank you for
Thank you
sharing
so
your
much.
journey. There you go.